Happy Friday. I'm Sal Greco, and you're watching and listening to the Sal Greco Show. If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit the like button, hit the share button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification button. If you're watching us on Rumble, please hit the Rumble button, hit the like button. And if you're listening on any major podcast streaming platforms, please like, share, and subscribe. So we're going to have a guest on today who has quite a story. I've been following her for a while with her own story because it's kind of intertwines with everything that's going on in the Eric Adams administration in New York City in general. So I'm going to bring her on, and we're going to get right to it. So today, like I said, I have a special guest. So, and I want her to let the audience know who she is. If you don't know who she is, it's Sarena Townsend. So, Sarena, welcome to the Sal Greco Show. It's an honor to have you here because I know a little bit of your story, not all of it, because we were kind of working on another side of the ledger. You were in corrections and I'm in the police department. But, Sarena, please welcome to the show and tell us all about yourself.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here. I'm Sarena Townsend. Right now I have my own law firm called Townsend Law, where I do a lot of different things. I represent police officers. I represent correction officers. I'm also a criminal defense attorney. I started my career as a prosecutor. I did that for an entire decade in Brooklyn. And then after that, which is what I think most people want to hear about, is my 6 years at corrections. So after I was a deputy bureau chief at the Brooklyn DA's office, I moved over to the New York City Department of Corrections. There, I was in charge of internal affairs. Basically, that's the investigation division, as well as the trials division. So it was my duty, I guess, to investigate and discipline correction officers and any staff on Rikers Island or in the department. So that's my background. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about why I ended up here, but that's the background.
That is insane. But that is a nice resume too, by the way.
Yeah.
So 10 years in Brooklyn, you were in the Brooklyn DA's office on J Street, correct?
That's right. Yep.
So you worked under Charles Hines.
I did. I worked under Charles Hines, and then Ken Thompson took over, but I left after that. So I didn't stay long enough to work under Gonzalez, but I worked with Eric Gonzalez, not directly with him, but we worked in the same kind of bureaus back in the day. So
and now it was broken down into zones, yellow zone, green zone. So I fell under the green zone. I worked in the 71st precinct and the 60th precinct. So I know Eric Gonzalez.
So you know Eric, yeah.
Hi, Eric. I know you may not want to say you knew who I was because your crony crowd around you don't like me because I'm not a Democrat or Eric Adams sycophant, but I did walk the halls on the 11th floor. Everyone there knew who I was. So I was just wondering if you worked in which zone, because I had a case, I believe, in a blue zone once, just one time.
So you stayed on the 11th floor because that's blue, green. Yeah, I was on the 11th floor. Yep. I was on there for a little bit because I did sex crimes prosecutions for a couple of years. Okay. But most of my career, I was in the red zone on the 12th floor.
On the 12th floor. Yeah.
Yep. So we covered the 7. We had a lot of work up there. We had the 7-5, the 6-7, the 6-9, and eventually the 8-8.
I remember because I had a lot of DWI cases, and I knew the top DWI cop in 75th precinct. He made all the arrests of DWI. That's how I know. So you can't see now. I know you were on John and Eric's show. You were on the Finance Unfiltered, but here, I know directly. At the Brooklyn DA's office. So
that's big because I was there 10 years, so we definitely did. We probably crossed paths at some point.
I would say so. I'd say that's amazing. I can't, because I know a lot of people now that probably, don't remember me, or they're going to act like they don't remember you or know who I was. But I was definitely, somebody that was up there a lot. I was on the 11th floor a lot. And I learned a lot underneath those guys, and I know how the court system work with the Brooklyn DA's office. So then we go from that to how did you end up in corrections? How'd you end up getting that job from there?
You know, you might be surprised to hear this, but I literally applied online. Like, I did not know anybody. I know, it's like nobody. So that's a funny story too. At the time at the DA's office, actually people were not making that much money. I know that surprises you. It's funny because you guys used to come in and prep with us, the DA's, for trial. And you guys would see us all the time. Like, we're working 24/7. We're prepping 1,000 cases. And inevitably you'd be like, well, at least you're making good overtime. And I'm like, no, DAs don't make any overtime. It's terrible.
No, it's bad. I know.
Yeah.
It's bad.
It was bad. And it was very bad back then. So at that time, I was married and we were just going to start a family. And I'm like, my husband actually was also a prosecutor. He was Blue Zone. We met at the DA's office. Yep. And so, basically couldn't afford to stay there. And I was like, I need to start making more money. So I basically just searched, to see what other agencies were hiring, and DOC was hiring, an assistant commissioner for their trials division. And so I applied. I literally just sent my resume, and a cover letter, and I was interviewed by the legal, general counsel, because the trials division fell under the general counsel at that time. And I was interviewed by a panel of people. I was interviewed by the commissioner himself. At the time, it was Joe Pont. And I got the gig. And I came in, and after a couple of years, I took over internal affairs also. So that's basically how I ended up in corrections.
Yeah. So you worked under Pont for how many years?
So I was under Pont for maybe 7 months. He left pretty soon after I got there. I was actually under several different commissioners. It was Joe Pont. Yeah. And each of them promoted me until Louis Molina, who fired me on day one. But yeah, Joe Pont hired me right away. Yep. We did great work together. Great commissioner. He ended up leaving, and Cynthia Brand took over for him. Both of them were actually from Maine. So that's why the names may not have been so familiar to you and to New York City law enforcement. And they had some trouble kind of getting in with the New York City crowd. We're not very welcoming. It's hard. Yeah. It's hard to run, right? It's hard to run a law enforcement agency in New York City if you're not from New York City. But Cynthia Brand also did a nice job, and she took over after Joe Pont. She's the one who ended up promoting me to deputy commissioner, where I took over internal affairs and kept the trials division as well. She was commissioner for a good amount of time. And then at the very end of de Blasio's administration, we had Vincent Schiraldi come in. He was only there for like 6-7 months. And with the new administration, he really had no ability to kind of stick around, unfortunately. So he didn't have, so much time over there. And he was basically fired just like I was. Maybe with less fireworks than I was, but but he was also fired. Yeah, we'll get to that. And then, Louis Molina came in and fired me at 2:00 on his first day on the job.
Yeah. And his tenure is probably loaded with the most, we'll say seedy things that may have occurred underneath him. And to this day, because of the guy who's in charge as the mayor. So I would say you worked for you were in the de Blasio administration. And then, of course, under Eric Adams, you didn't even last long as, you're not rolling with that crowd, which is, I try to point this out that actually, as much as people don't want to admit this, Bill de Blasio as the mayor, New York City was actually in better shape, where crime was actually lower under Bill de Blasio. It's hard for me to say. The guy is, the dope from Park Slope, as Curtis Slewa called him. But under Eric Adams, crime has gone up. Yep. The administration, everywhere you look, they're mired in some kind of controversy, some investigation. It's everybody and everyone around them. And we're going to go back to when you were in the Brooklyn DA's office. Eric Adams was the Brooklyn Borough president. His office is right down the street.
He sure was.
I'm sure you saw him walking in and out of the building just like I did. But we didn't interact with this guy because we knew through certain elements in the police department and the D's office that this is not a guy you want to be friends with because he loves to surround himself with corruptible people, and he is a highly conflicted individual. We knew this from that time frame. So I'm kind of letting the cat out of the bag that, yes, I have seen Eric Adams when I was a cop, and no, I never went up to him. I did not want to talk to him because I know, and certain other people around me knew, stay away from him because of what you're seeing today.
Exactly. And actually, Louis Molina was a DI in the Brooklyn DA's office when I was there. I don't know of any work that he accomplished over there, but technically, yeah, he was employed there, if you could believe it. It's just crazy. But yeah, it's something that you're seeing now that is almost not to be believed. And everybody is going to have fair criticism of our mayor, no matter who the mayor is, right? Right. De Blasio too. Like, no mayor was perfect. Even though I was hired in the de Blasio administration, I didn't care about that. Like, I just wanted to increase my salary. I thought I was going to be a prosecutor for life. And when the salary didn't meet my living needs, I left. Had nothing to do with like, oh, I'm backing this politician or not. I ended up in a very political position, being the head of internal affairs, which I never even contemplated, and maybe I should have. But yeah, I mean, de Blasio did things that I disagreed with. He did things that I agreed with. And we could all come together and say, we've had mayors in New York City who have done things that we did not like. But can you really say that all of those mayors were basically running a criminal enterprise like Eric Adams is? Because that's what he's doing. And that's different from just being a crappy mayor.
And you know that firsthand because you've had to deal with one of his underlings, not only in corrections, but also in the Brooklyn DA's office. Now you're starting to get me. I'm starting to remember this guy Molina myself because, I've known the name. These are people that you would avoid. You don't want to be around Anthony Miranda. You don't want to be around Luis Molina. You don't want to be around the Timothy Pearsons of the Phil Banks of the world because their name is synonymous with there's something hidden behind them in a trap door or something that they're involved in. You've heard these rumors forever. And as a cop or an attorney, you just want to steer away from that. You just want to do your job. So that's the way it seems you were and how I am. And it continues to this day. But now we'll go to the corrections part because I saw a lot of things that were controversial. People were, hitting and attacking you and stuff. So, that means you were also there on the Norman's. Was Norman Seabrook there when you were in corrections also?
I think he was there for a short period of time, and then he was gone. I don't think I didn't deal too much. Yeah, I dealt with Elias Housamadine, who was the union president for the correction officers for most of my tenure there. We actually had a decent relationship, and then Benny Basio took over, and he just thinks I'm the devil.
Yeah, I know. I know that name. I know that name well. Yes, Benny Basio.
Yep.
And so the thing was because you are a prosecutor, so you're basically in the equivalent of what the New York City Police Department has. You are the department advocate. Yes. You are the commissioner. You put on the cases. So you would be the prosecutor. Now you have a trial commissioner, right? So that means they act like a judge, but technically on the books, you're a lawyer that's acting as a commissioner. You can't call yourself a judge, correct?
It's similar. So PD is a little different from DOC. I know exactly what you're talking about. In PD, you do have that deputy commissioner who acts as a judge, basically, in the trials division, right?
Or assistant commissioner.
Assistant commissioner, yeah. Here at DOC, we actually farm those trials out to Oath, the Office of Administrative Trials and Hearings.
Okay.
And so that's why, a lot of the unions were like, oh, you can't be the commissioner of both investigations and trial. That's a conflict of interest. And I'm like, you're purposely not getting the actual job. I have nothing to do with putting on the case. My lawyers, the people who worked for me would prosecute the case, but the actual fact finder was a judge, an ALJ at Oath, who made that report and recommendation, not the trials commissioner like you guys had it in PD. And then the Oath report and recommendation goes to the commissioner of the department, which is over me. And the commissioner would make a final decision. So that was my position. But still, I was deemed like public enemy number one because I had the ability to suspend people as the head of internal affairs. I had that ability to kind of, demote people if they were on probation, but everybody who had passed probation was entitled to due process. And, they had the ability to either, negotiate a plea or they could take their case and fight it at oath.
I see. So you can go either way. It's slightly different, but it's kind of like a same kind of setup. You do have a trial if you are going to fight the case. If you're deemed that you've done something so egregious that you want to present it. And, it could be a termination case, something that would be in the oath part.
That's
so you would
exactly right.
Okay.
Yes. So, I was like, you guys, a lot of the officers, they don't necessarily understand the due process, like the way that it works. And the union was more than happy. The union presidents were more than happy to just pretend that this is all on me. It was very easy for them to be like, we're going to fix discipline for you. We're going to get rid of Townsend. They held like pep rallies, literally screaming my name. If you Google it on YouTube, you'll find it like literally screaming like Sarena Townsend's got to go. And I was like, what on earth is happening? Like, am I in the Salem witch trials right now? This is like insane. And then they roll out Louis Molina and he ends up terminating way more people than anybody was terminated under my reign. And he went in and bragged about it. I was like, I hope you guys are happy. Great job. Genius move on your part. So yeah, it's ridiculous. But the real reason why, they got rid of me was because the union presidents wanted to be able to say that they helped out the members by getting rid of me. In truth, it was because I disciplined people fairly. And when I started to discipline the union cronies, their friends, their executives, only then was I all of a sudden public enemy number one. So those union presidents were not actually looking after their members. They were just looking after their friends because they never really had a problem with me until I started going after their friends.
So because you were basically have no choice but to bring a case against some of the, we'll say, what are you going to call them? The upper echelon of the union or friends of the union versus when you get a regular guy that has no ties to either cronyism or nepotism in the union, nobody cares. It's when you are in front of them or their friends that now they have to get rid of you because you hurt their pal. Is that the way this is?
Exactly. And so what ends up happening is they have a sit down with Mayor Adams and Molina before Molina took the helm, like a couple of weeks before. I found out about this a long time after the fact, because I don't like to let things go. So I did my research. But I find out that they have this meeting like a couple of weeks before Molina starts. And essentially the union, Molina wants to get in good with the union because we all know that the union presidents also like to leak things to the press. And basically they can get rid of a commissioner with bad press. And they've done it before, right? So like Molina wants their blessing. Adams wants their blessing. And so, my head on a silver platter would be great for them. So then Molina comes in. And before he actually takes the position in January, he meets with me in late December in like a one-on-one in my office. And I now that I know that he had met with the unions before that, I was like, now I recognize what it was. That meeting was a test for me to see, like, is she really, going to do the right thing and piss off the unions? Or can I, is she going to be a yes man like I want? And when he met with me, he asked me to get rid of 2,000 cases in his first 100 days. And I'm like, thank you. Anybody with a brain knows that that is impossible. First of all, it's not up to me. There's due process. I can't force them to sign a plea deal. They have to consider their options. They have to speak with their lawyer. They have to, either take a plea or go to trial. I had actually been able to rid us of thousands and thousands of cases in this backlog that started because of the reforms that were happening in the department. It was a very difficult situation where the second the department signed a consent decree, all of a sudden the units that I ended up taking over, they accumulated an immediate backlog because they didn't have any additional staff to take over all of these extra cases. Right. Basically, the department agreed in federal court to take on all these use of force cases that the investigation division never took on before, to do them in a better way, like more thorough way, because previously they were handled in a biased way, to do them faster, like they agreed to do it in a shorter statute of limitations period of time, and doing all of that extra work with no extra staff at the outset. So immediately, and this was before my time, this was like 2 years before I even came to the department. So my predecessors accumulated like a 10,000 case backlog in just the use of force investigations. So I had been working, for those last couple of years when I did take over to get rid of that backlog, and it had been working. I had gotten the place into, compliance in areas where we were not compliant before. And, the federal monitor was very happy with me and us like kind of moving cases more swiftly. And by the way, that benefits the members too. Like I didn't want cases hanging over people's heads. Now you can't get promoted. Now you gotta, leave with charges. It's messed up. But anyway, I sat there telling Molina, like, I have a plan for the rest of this backlog. Like, it's actually been working. But 2,000 cases in your first 100 days, like, that's not possible unless you're asking me basically to dismiss cases, which is against the consent decree. We had like a literal agreement to resolve use of force cases with a certain level of discipline. You get it. You guys had disciplinary matrix too. So, but now we were under federal oversight in a federal court. So like, if you don't abide by that matrix, if I'm just going to dump cases, we're going to be in contempt of court. I'm not going to do that to this, to you or the department. He couldn't understand or appreciate any of it. I'm trying to explain this to him. And he basically is like, yeah, so how are you going to get rid of 2,000 cases in my first 100 days? I'm like, God. I'm like, you just wanted a talking point. You wanted to be like, oh, look what I did in my first 100 days. It was ridiculous. So I told him, we'll talk about it. We'll figure out a way. I can't do that, but I can do something else. Like, I'll come up with a good plan for you. And he's like, okay, we'll sit down on my first day. We'll go over your plan. I come in on my first day and he fires me.
Yeah, that definitely sounds like something these guys would do. In the beginning, when you first got there, people had a lot of optimism. Eric Adams is a cop and all this stuff, but you didn't know we knew Eric Adams was because we saw him every day outside the 350 J Street. He's not a good guy. And the people he hung around with then are the same people you see now. And you're like, we knew this. It's like, where is the rest of New York City? Who I always say, low information voters, that is what's destroying not only New York City, but some of the country. Luckily, they made the right decision in November because they were being informed. But here in New York City, low information rules. I could tell about who they elect, who they just blindly back. They don't even ask questions. You're like, what? So just seeing this. So with this guy, and then I heard you on John and Eric's show. So there's going to be more to what you're saying here because obviously you're in charge of these disciplinary cases. Mm-hmm. There's all these reforms. I don't know if you take part of the reforms or the reform is done by people on top of you or the administration as far as who's in office. But then how does Tim Pearson get into this situation? I heard his name. Yeah. And that guy is probably the single worst human being Eric Adams ever appointed to any position or surrounds himself with. He is by far the worst, in my opinion, and the opinion of many others. Tim Pearson is the worst human being that's ever been in any mayoral, deputy, anything, any office. So please tell me, how did that come about with him? And if you had anything to do with these other reforms prior to this, because I know that the department changed how they did things.
Right. So Tim Pearson was involved because he was clearly on the transition team. And when it became clear that, Vinnie Schiraldi, who was the commissioner before, was not going to stay, he was in charge of interviewing all of the executives at the Department of Correction. So that included me, all of us deputy commissioners and above. He was literally the one who came to, we have the Bulova building. That's our headquarters in Queens. He came to the Bulova building. He sat in the commissioner's office, which was empty at that time. He brought, like two kids. He looked like two interns. I didn't really know who they were, but he came in carrying like this big fat binder of all of us. It had all of our bios, our pictures, and he's flipping through. And on the screen on the wall was like a Zoom with four different people, one of whom was Louis Molina, watching in on this interview. And so Tim Pearson interviewed me and all of my colleagues and and my friends who are still my friends, one at a time. And we had to sign up for a time slot. He interviewed me. The interview actually went quite well. I was very on top of my data, my stats. I was a very hands-on deputy commissioner. So I had answers to his questions. And when the interview was done, he actually walked me out. And I don't believe he did that with other people. Like, I think other people just came and went in the door, but he walked me out so that we were no longer in view of the TV. Like, we were in the hallway, in the vestibule area. And at that point, he said to me, "Do you want to stay?" He's like, "You want to stay here?" And I said, I mean, yeah, I have some unfinished business, which I did. I really wanted to get into that final level of compliance. And I knew I needed like a good year to just finish everything up. So I said, yeah, I feel like I have some unfinished business. I'd like to stay. And he's like, yeah, don't worry about it. Don't worry. People are going to talk about you and, they're going to talk about you because you're IAB. I get it. I've been there. Don't let it get you down because that's just the nature of that job. You'll be fine. You'll be good. And like I was like, gee, thanks. I appreciate it. And he shook my hand and that was it. So I was like, okay. I mean, I guess things are fine. But I don't know what exactly happened after that with the union and Molina and Eric Adams. Like, I don't know. I don't know if he came in and was like, I don't see a problem with her. And everyone else was like, well, the unions hate her. So tough shit. You know what I mean? He might have been like, she's fine, but whatever. So that was my experience with Tim Pearson. But the other thing that was happening was in the days following that interview, and before January, when Molina took over, I was getting my staff, my confidentials were getting calls, asking them to ask me about certain cases that I had open. Certain cases that they wanted to see resolved before they came. Okay. And I was like, I'm not doing, like, I'm so apolitical. I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not going to do that. But one of the cases was, against this woman named DeVelle Williams. DeVelle Williams was I believe a corrections captain at the time. And I had an open case against her. It was a DWI case. It was an off-duty arrest case. Right. It's not like, I'm saying you used force inappropriately, but you used force appropriately. Like, it's an actual arrest. That's going to be an immediate generation of a case. And we were talking about DWIs earlier. The worst kind of DWIs are not the ones where someone's just like asleep at the wheel at a red light, right?
No, you're talking about being pulled over. Like what I used to do, you pull over, you do a breathalyzer, you do let's say, a nystagmus test on your eye, stuff like that. And the DWI, it is what it is, it happens.
Yeah. So this case was pretty bad. She was coming home from a party, a DOC party, driving on the Southern State Parkway. She drove another car off of the road, causing that car to hit a tree. Somehow, someone ended up following her because she fled the scene. And I guess they called 911. Something happened where, cops pulled her over. They caught up to her and she blew at double the limit. Okay.
So she about 1.6. That would
basically
be
like a 1.6. Right. So all of the markings of like a really bad case. And mind you, you and I both know, right? This happened on Long Island in Nassau County. This is not Brooklyn. Okay. Yeah. We're not given like the 1192-1 violation when you go to the DA, right? You're getting, okay. So this is the weirdest story, Sal. You're not even going to believe this story because it's the craziest thing ever. So that case is one of the million cases that I have. And I get a call okay, you got to take care of that case. And I was like, I can't do anything with this case because it's open in criminal court. Like no officer or captain or anybody is going to plea to my case if that case in criminal court is still open, because now you're admitting guilt. Like their lawyer is not going to be like, yeah, just take a plea. So, and I'm not going to dismiss it because it's a legit DWI case. Well, come to find out, I'm fired, right? Molina hires his BFF, somebody to take over who ended up getting pushed out because he was sweeping cases under the rug. Shocker. But he comes in, and next thing I know, I hear that this case just does not exist anymore. Okay. And Javelle Williams gets a promotion. So when you're a captain, that's like a first level supervisor in corrections. She gets a promotion to ADW status, assistant deputy warden, which is the next level. She gets promoted and she becomes Luis Molina's right hand. She has been his right hand this entire time in corrections, when he went to City Hall because he got pushed out of corrections and they needed to find like a hiding spot for him. Now in DCAS, like she's been his right hand, this person who had a DWI. And it really pissed off the members because you probably could appreciate this. When people have that kind of disciplinary record, they're not getting promoted. They're not getting to be the commissioner's confidential. That's crazy. Well, guess what? Because you wanted to talk about Tim Pearson. One of the first cases I ever dealt with as a criminal defense attorney was in Nassau County. I show up to Nassau County Criminal Court, and it was April of 24. I had only been gone from DOC for like 3 months. And who is right in front of me in line in criminal court in Nassau County? Tim Pearson. And I'm like, what is happening right now? Okay. He turns around like this and I'm like, oh my God, it's Tim Pearson. Like, I can't, like, I was just fired 3 months prior. Okay. And he does this double take because he recognized me, but probably didn't realize from where, I guess. And he was being nice. He was like, oh, hey, how are you? And I was like, I'm good. Good to see you. He had the shield out, going through the metal detector. Like, I know it was him. Okay. And I'm like, why is he here? But I didn't follow him because I wish I did, but I didn't follow him because I had a client I had to take care of. But I was like, gee, maybe he was part of a case and like now he's testifying as a witness or something like that. But I'm like, that's so weird still. Come to find out, because dude, there's a reason why I was in charge of internal affairs. Okay. I've been like figuring this all out for years. Come to find out, that day that I was in Nassau County Criminal Court, Javelle Williams' DWI case was on in court that same day in that same courthouse, and it was taken care of. Now, again, I remind you, Nassau County is like the founding land of Mothers Against Drunk Driving, MAD. Like, Nassau County typically handles DWIs incredibly seriously. You don't typically see a DWI case just kind of get brushed to the side, especially when there's injuries and victim. So I'm not saying that I know that he did anything in this case, but I find it very interesting that all of those things happened to happen. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Anytime you see Tim Pearson walk, first of all, I think you were brave as a female in a room alone with him, because he wasn't allowed to have any females alone with him since in his, I guess, deputy public safety, mayor of public safety, was a deputy of the deputy. And he was running around the New York City Police Department. And now we know this for sure. He was sitting down once a month or once every other week with the NYPD chief of internal affairs, Miguel Iglesias. By the way, they know each other because they were both Con Sofrito alumni, which was a place where it's the Hall of Felons. Everyone can hang out with Eric and his cronies. Yet, you're not supposed to be associating with certain people. And we don't know what really occurred there. It's still a mystery. Human trafficking stuff and drugs and all this other stuff. So he sees Iglesias, meaning this guy who's the deputy mayor of the deputy mayor of public safety and an advisor. He's not a cop. He's not part of police department. him walking in is already a conflict because he's supposed to go to the police commissioner, who at that time could have either been Keyshawn Sewell or the party commissioner, Eddie Caban, who he also partied with at Con Sofrito together because that was his brother's place, allegedly. So now this sidestepping, we don't know how this occurred because this could be Eric Adams as the mayor just giving power and saying, we're going to listen to whatever Pearson wants, whatever he says goes. So I know we all know that he was meeting with internal affairs, and then he was interfering with internal cases. So if you had a case in internal affairs of discipline, but you, I don't know, may have been a friend of Eric Adams or whatever, he's interfering because he clearly butted in on those cases of the sergeant who said that he was sexually harassing her and he put his hands on her and all the. So once she started making these complaints, this guy gets on the phone and starts acting like the guy that we know, that I know at least how he is. He starts acting like a big tough guy, you know? Now we're going to do this. I'm going to do that to them. And you're like, well, wait a minute. This guy's a deputy mayor. He's not the police. Who is this guy? He works for the mayor. We then have him at a migrant shelter, this would be the final nail in his coffin when he decides to go there wearing an NYPD flak jacket. He doesn't work for the NYPD. He works for the mayor. He should say NYC mayor office, not NYPD. Goes in now in the migrant shelters. They have their own security and say, listen, we can't let you in. Who the hell are you? I'm Tim Pearson, blah, blah, blah. Who authorized you here? This is our property. I represent the shelter who said no one's allowed in. And here he comes and he puts his hands on the security guard. He also the same thing with the female security guard. So here it is. These two people then get arrested. Now, they shouldn't be arrested. It's actually him as the aggressor. He should have never, first of all, done that. Second of all, he doesn't who is he representing? Because he's not in the NYPD, but he called people to get the NYPD down there. I believe they called what we know as a level 3, which is there's 5 levels. When you hear level 3 mobilization, that means, we got to go. So he called a level 3 because somehow the police department showed up and handcuffed those two people. They spent the night in jail. They should have never. It was a false arrest. That's a lawsuit.
That's a lawsuit. Yep.
And Tim Pearson running around on all these migrant shelter deals. And then we come to find out also in the same lawsuits and allegations where we found out that he's sexually harassing this female, that guy, this guy's all over the place, was where we found out where he said in regards to the migrant shelter contracts, he said, where's my crumbs?
There it is.
Look, this guy is like up to his eyeballs in all sorts of mishigash that went around Eric Adams' administration. So now we have Tim Pearson, who also had his phone taken and all that stuff, so which means he's been subpoenaed and he's either a target or a subject in federal investigations. This is the guy who was coming around to you and had this interview. He's the one making decisions with the other crony, Molina, and they decided they had to let you go over a case that all of a sudden was not only dismissed or whatever happened in Nassau County. He was there. He just so happened to walk into the building the day of the case. I find this fascinating. It's the same thing with the migrant bill. Fascinating.
Yes.
And Tim Pearson. And I know for a fact this guy, first of all, in the New York City Police Department, he retired without a good guy letter. The same way they terminated me. When you leave the police department, the reason you leave with your pension and you walk away, that means you left in good standing.
Yep.
That's what the good guy letter is. You could then apply for a job. You could carry a gun, all 50 states. You could have your own security firm, using the HR2 law. Tim Pearson did not retire with that. And in fact, Tim Pearson does not have this letter. We know because he applied for a gun license again with the New York City Police Department when he was. So wait a minute. I thought you retired. So what happened is, and what people don't realize is he was under investigation numerous times in the police department. He had domestic violence issues. So, you could tell he's got a hot temper. But at the end, he left in a cloud of dust. There was an investigation on him, and he did the same thing you've seen these guys run out the door. So you don't have to see that investigation through internally, but it doesn't mean that you leave in good standing either.
That's
so he
right.
might have a retired ID. I don't know, but I know the right to carry a firearm. He doesn't. And if you want to double check this, he should have had a security license, because if you remember when he retired, Mr. Eric Adams, as the Senate, when he was in the Senate, was under investigation for the race casino, which he skated on, and all his pals went to prison, even though his testimony is damning, and you all should read that one. But Eric Adams then got a job for his friend, Tim Pearson, who was the head of security at Resorts Casino. Yet we know of this mishigas in the New York City Police Department that he was involved in, that somehow we don't know the full story of that last investigation that occurred. So that is the story of Tim Pearson. Yet I find it ironic how he intertwined with you. Somehow you had to deal with this guy, and it was the nail in the coffin for you. Because I feel that him talking to you, that's basically the nail in the coffin. He's you really want to stay here? And the fact that you didn't get rid of that case, they said, she's not going to play ball. She's out of here. And that's exactly how quick you were gone.
That's exactly right. That it was very clear that I wasn't going to play ball with that, and I wasn't going to play ball with the dumping of the cases en masse. And I just wasn't going to be the right fit for this administration. And you know what? I am so proud that you and I are just not a fit for this administration, because what would that say about us? What would that say? So I agree with you. I think none of this is coincidental. It all tracks. What I've learned is speaking with people like you and the guys in the Unfiltered podcast, knowing essentially that this is basically out of their book. That happened in corrections. It happened in PD. It's happening in every agency, I am sure. But there are very few people, I think, who are able to speak out about it. That's what I think. And I think you probably agree too. So there's just a lot of people out there who know what's going on, but and I don't necessarily blame them, but they can't, for whatever reason, speak out. Maybe under subpoena they will.
Yeah. But that's what I'm saying. I wanted to humanize you, because I saw some things that people have to learn, one thing. And I said this recently too, with the whole January 6th part. You have to take your feelings out of the equation.
Yeah.
I don't like that. But whatever the reason is, just look at things by the book and by the law. So I saw people say, you somehow had a hand in reform. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. You could confirm and deny that. Yeah. Is that even true? Did you have a hand in any reforms?
No. So the Nunez consent decree was signed in 2015, and I was still a DA in 2015. I didn't come to the job until 2016. And I did take over for the, people who had to implement those reforms, and therefore I had to implement those reforms. But no, in fact, I hate to say it, but the truth is a lot of us, including us, the people who had to apply certain of these disciplinary guidelines, we really were like in shock that some things were signed without thinking about the members a little bit more, without thinking about the repercussions of some of those reforms. And look, I had to play the bad guy in every arena in my position, because the COs and all the people who probably are complaining to you about me felt, I was hard on them and I was a disciplinarian, when in reality, I fired way fewer people than this administration fired, and I went to bat for them. The problem is this administration doesn't have the goods. And so when a federal monitor comes in and says, you have to do this, you have to fire this many people, you have to do that under these reforms, they're not willing to stand up to them because they don't know what they're doing. So they can't stand by their work. They can't be like, listen, I'm not going to do that because actually that chokehold wasn't a chokehold, or actually, we investigated this thoroughly and you're wrong. And they don't have the credibility to go up against the monitor or anybody or counsel. I did. So in certain situations, I did take a hard line position in bad cases. But in a lot of other positions that nobody knows about, I went up against the monitor. I went up against counsel. I went up against, reformers who were like, you have to do this, you have to do that. And I'm like, I don't think you're right. And it is what it is. I get it. Like, I've gotten so much backlash because the unions have fed that Kool-Aid to a lot of officers because it takes the heat off of them for being really inept and also corrupt. So it is what it is. Like, they have face to face. I'm not allowed. Right. They're entitled to lawyers. I wasn't allowed to speak to people face to face. Their union can. So they have the ability to influence a whole bunch of people against me because they couldn't just say, yeah, we actually just suck at our job. We can't defend you properly. So yeah, I get it. Like, you're going to hear that, but there is always another side to that story.
Exactly. So well, the reason I said this is because these are some of the allegations you hear. So I want to just clear that up that, you didn't have a hand in the reforms. You have to implement it due to the federal monitor. So what I'm trying to say is the feelings of some people are, you're to blame for the punishment or their termination. So I'm trying to, make it. So I get it. We got to take our feelings out of things. Even if, like, listen, am I fine? I've never met Tim Pearson, but I'm going to tell you when I hear this is not a human being that I want to be around. So, but eliminating your feelings. Look at how society works. Certain people, they said those pardons for the people from January 6th shouldn't happen because they don't like them. So one individual in particular that was given a 30-year sentence, I believe, and wasn't even in D.C. that day, nor partook in any actions that occurred that day. This person was sent an email or a message over Telegram they never opened and they said, no, you are a seditious conspirator, therefore you are convicted. And by the way, in the trial, he wasn't allowed to produce his own defense, certain materials. So they even constrict how you defend yourself in court. Ultimately, he's found guilty in D.C., where they hate everybody or anyone that's either A, conservative, or B, Trump. And if you minus your feelings out of what I'm saying because you may or may not like this person, that right there sounds un-American. Putting a guy in jail for 30 years that wasn't even involved in this entire episode that occurred that day. And the only thing they were guilty of is not even opening an email that was basically an entrapment from an FBI informant. So if you want to see him still in prison and believes that this person is the reason, that is all rhetoric and feeling. Here's the reality. In America, you have rights. Here, unfortunately, this person did not have rights. They took those rights away and said, to hell with this person, and anyone that knows him, throw them in a gulag. Now, you or I may not agree with that group. And so I don't like the actions of some of these characters. I don't like what they do, but it doesn't mean I'm going to run around and say they deserve to go in prison for the rest of their life because I don't like them. That sounds like, the country that we basically beat into submission, the Soviet Union. Okay, that's what we did as a country. You sound like one of them. So I'm saying here right now with you, people have a perceived notion or a feeling because you are their prosecutor. You are doing your job. This isn't personal. Sometimes you can help, sometimes you can't. And in the end, we have a case with you that you should never have actually lost your job, that you're actually only following the law, which right now I really question if anyone in corrections in charge is doing under a federal monitor. And for that reason alone, you were taken out. Some people are cheering. Some people don't like it. But feelings aside again, I don't think this is right what happened to you. And I think the reason that you were taken out was because you're not part of that club that they have, that they all, little club, the clique they have, because you're willing to do the right thing versus the wrong thing. And this whole Tim Pearson showing up to Nassau County reeks and stinks like something that Eric Adams would be involved in because what have we learned about him? Look at his entire administration. Does anybody think this guy's running a clean operation? Is there anyone that wants to stand up if you're not a sycophant? Because I'm a cop. You were there. You were an attorney. You would take these cases. You go where the facts lead you.
That's right.
I just wanted you to know, I just want to humanize you because I didn't like what I'm seeing. And I'm not going against these people too that make these claims or whatever, but take your feelings aside and look at your case because your anger actually shouldn't be towards Sarena, but the people that were in charge on top of her and the predicament they put corrections in to begin with the whole federal monitor. This is a decades old problem. Will we ever see reform there? I don't know. It might be a federal takeover soon. You might see one soon. I have no idea.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, I think that there needs to be a federal takeover because there has to be a balancing of these scales. You know, we went too far, I think, in a lot of these implementations. And, you know, when it's the federal law, you got to follow the law, but a receiver could come in and really straighten things out as long as it's the right person, honestly. But yeah, exactly what you said before, which is I follow the evidence. I follow the facts. That's what I did as a prosecutor. It's what I did in DOC. And the truth of the matter is the smartest officers are the ones who hire me now because they do, because I'm happy to represent them. First of all, I represented, I worked with police for a decade as a prosecutor. So for me, it's not a strange thing to do. And it's actually very nice. I feel like I'm back with my people a little bit, doing this. But, you know, the officers, both in PD and in corrections, who come to me and they say, look, we really need your help. I am not only happy to help them, but I'm probably the best equipped to help them because I know what it is on the inside. I know what it is at every angle on both sides of the trial room. I've been everywhere. So, you know, the ones who are not just angry because they either have been fed lies or maybe they had a case that I was in charge of and they're just upset about that. You know, it is what it is. But the people who are looking at it, like you say, just fact-based and, you know, maturely, then they understand exactly what it is and they know why all of these things happened. And, you know, then they can look at it with a clear view instead of a biased view. Yes. Mm-hmm. Oh my God. Yes. Horrible. Yeah. Yes. And other correction officers believe that too. The good ones do. You know what I mean? Like the good ones want the bad ones to be prosecuted. They want, you know, they want to be a credible agency. And you can't be a credible agency if you employ and you don't hold accountable the bad apples. There's always bad apples in every, you know, I'm interviewed by Law and Crime all the time on sexual predators who are teachers. Does that mean that all teachers hate me? Cause they're like, oh my God, every time Sarena talks about teachers, they're pedophiles. And I'm like, no, this is just the case that they're asking me about. My whole family is a family of educators. So it's not about criticizing the Department of Correction or teachers or any group of people. But if you are a good and professional person, then you want your bad apples to be removed from the bin. And that's really what my job was.
I applaud you. I know some people may not like that.
Thank you.
Listen, I think that, for everything you've done, and then at the end, you're dealing with the monster Tim Pearson and that whole clown show that's like destroying New York City. And the facts are that everyone can see it. There's allegations, there's indictments, there's investigations. And Sarena had to deal with that. And the minute she stood up against it, she was gone. And I know, guys, saw the story, how they tried, the smear campaign, which is another tactic. And they do this a lot to females. You could see by the sexual harassment lawsuits that are going on. So it's just a pattern of abuse by these people. I don't know what it's going to take. I'm seeing a lot of people now agreeing with this entire the theory of mine and actual fact. And it's good. Because law information needs to stop. You need to be informed. That's what I think. But there's one other thing is I'm sure you heard how I was terminated. They said I was friends with Roger Stone. He's a big criminal. You knowingly and knowingly associate with someone who's likely or reasonably believed to have engaged in criminal activity. Mm-hmm. We're going to forget that they hung around a mob associate, self-admitted criminal that for 1 hour was mentioning on a podcast about all the stuff that they're involved in up there at the Bronx, never referencing that nightclub I told you about. So In corrections, before I show you this, does corrections have a rule you can't associate with someone like that, or no? Is there a rule at all?
You have to alert the department, and you could be told essentially that you can't associate with them. But if, like, for example, if you have a child and your child gets arrested, you have to alert the department immediately. And they'll do something about it, but it doesn't necessarily mean you can't ever speak to your child. There's just rules that are in place with respect to that, and you have to alert the department.
I see. So you do have a rule, but it's not as drastic as the police department, where the rule is, it doesn't really say what it should, which is all what I said, but in commission of a crime, meaning this person's alleged to have been doing a crime, and here you are, you're standing with them. You guys committed a crime together, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Not, I shook someone's hand, I know someone, they have a record, or they have a nightclub with all kinds of mishigas going on, but I'm there every day, and the police department's there, and we don't know what's really going on, but we know investigations are now. So now I'm going to pull this up because they made a big deal. And I'm talking about the police department, and it was Eric Adams' police department, by the way. So I put in my post, hey, New York City Mayor Eric Adams, didn't your NYPD terminate me for being friends with who you are pictured with here? You want to drag my lawsuit on, hoping I die, but you will be deposed by your longtime rival, my attorney, Eric Sanders, and held accountable. Hashtag the Sal Greco Show. I don't know, Serena, what do you think about that? I mean, just want to get your thoughts. You're a lawyer.
Rules for thee and not for me. That's Eric Adams's whole brand. First of all, Eric Adams is indicted. So maybe it doesn't matter now that he's also potential felon status. I don't know. But, I just think it's such the highest level of hypocrisy that you could imagine. But for him, I don't even think he blinks an eye. I think he really just does not believe that the rules apply to him, because that is how he's been acting during his entire administration. And it's how his friends act, and it's how his colleagues act, because all of his colleagues are his friends. These are the people that he has chosen to surround himself with. His colleagues, his deputy mayors, his, Phil Banks, the unindicted co-conspirator. Like, these are the apples on the tree. So they're not going to fall far from each other. So yeah, he'd be more than happy to discipline you for the very same thing that he is doing. It's outrageous.
But for me, I don't know if it can work in the courtroom. And I have one final one I want to show you.
Okay.
Here's a picture of the new deputy mayor for Eric Adams, right? And this is breaking news, okay?
Mm-hmm.
NYPD Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch is allegedly upset that New York City Mayor Eric Adams and his Deputy Mayor Camille Joseph Verloc are supporting Deputy Commissioner Operations Kaz Dodry, NYPD Chief of Department John Schell's moves regarding public safety and NYPD matters over hers because she doesn't understand what needs to be done. Tisch was never a police officer. We could be headed to Police Commissioner number 5 under Eric Adams shortly. Hashtag the finest unfiltered. Hashtag the Sal Greco Show. I just get your quick thoughts on that.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of drama there, because once you have that infighting and once you challenge an Eric Adams crony or friend, because it doesn't seem like Tisch is an Eric Adams crony or friend. So once you step to that, you're going to be in for a world of trouble. I think a lot of it's going to depend on where Eric Adams's brain is. Right now, he's seeking a pardon from Trump, and I think he's solely focused on that. It really does seem like he is. He abandoned all of his MLK obligations. He literally is talking about how the Democratic Party abandoned him. He is fully in Eric Adams savior mode. So I don't know where his attention is. It's certainly not on our city. It's certainly not on making our city safer or better. And so I do wonder how that's all going to play out, all of that infighting, but I'm sure you'll report all about it when it does come out.
I try to be ahead of the curve. As you know, you got to be ahead of that. And I'm presenting things that if anyone in the media, you're in those, rooms with Eric Adams and company, you should ask him, because trust me, what I'm telling you will be in 1, any civil litigation, or 2, it might be in an indictment coming. And once it hits those, the answer will be, we don't comment on pending litigation. Or it's a criminal indictment. Well, we are cooperating with the Southern District of New York Ask them the questions. That's what's coming if you don't ask right now. Sarena,
That's true.
I've had a great time here. I hope to have you back soon. Where
Thank
can
you.
people find you? Where can people follow you on social media?
Thank you so much, Sal. I really enjoyed being with you, and we definitely have to do this again because I think we both have a lot more to say on a lot of topics. They could find me. So my law firm is online, www.townsendlawnyc.com. I'm on X or Twitter as I think Townsend Sarena. I am on IG, Instagram as Sarena T, SarenaTee. And then I blew up on TikTok recently, and so that's kind of cool, but I'm just Sarena Townsend there. So anywhere, you just Google me, you'll find all of the smear campaign articles and all of the fun stuff too, and everything in between. But you'll also find a lot of wins, so that's cool.
That's what matters. And if you are looking for a reputable lawyer, you have one right here, someone who knows the system. Much like my attorney with the New York City Police Department.
Yeah.
So listen, it's been fun. I hope everybody enjoys their weekend. We'll be back soon. And like I say, let's make New York City great again. Okay. How about that one? All right.
I love it.
And until next time, I bid adieu and farewell.